Krsna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda.
Hare Krishna. We are back again. We are sitting outside on the kind of balcony, I would say, because it's summer now. When we are recording it, maybe not when we are sending it. We don't know. We're reading Bhagavad-gita as it is, because our channel is Bhagavad-gita, here it is. And this edition of Bhagavad-gita is translated and commented by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and my name is Labanga Latika. We are quickly reaching the end of the 4th chapter, so we have already come a long way. We know now that we are the eternal spirit soul, we are not this body. We know a little bit about the influence of our activities on our life and our consciousness. And in the 4th chapter, called Transcendental Knowledge, we're deepening that knowledge. And I'm reading text 31. Nayang lokisya yagyasya kutonya kuru sattama. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Purport. Whatever form of material existence one is invariably ignorant of his real situation. In other words, existence in the material world is due to the multiple reactions to our sinful lives. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, and sinful life is the cause of one's dragging on in material existence. The human form of life is the only loophole by which one may get out of this entanglement. The Vedas therefore give us a chance for escape by pointing out the paths of religion, economic comfort, regulated sense gratification, and at last the means to get out of the miserable condition entirely. So that's the perspective of the Bhagavad-gita. We know this one thing. I am the spirit soul. Presently I'm in a material body, and I cannot see a way out of that. On my own, I cannot find the way out of that. It's like those, I don't know how popular they are, I've only read about them, these escape rooms. You can pay money to be locked into a room, and you have to figure out the clues how to get out again. It's not apparent. In my home, it's very apparent. I get up, I go to the door, and then I'm outside the house. Very uncomplicated. This body, though, I don't see that door. And one of those escape rooms, you have to figure out the clues. In this material world, those clues are actually impossible to figure out. How can you even figure out that you are not this body? We have a certain intuition, and with our intelligence, we can come to a certain point of realizing the difference between life, spirit, and matter. But exactly how it works, it's very difficult to understand. And here we get a very quick overview. We see existence in this world is due to the multiple reactions of our sinful lives. Or sinful means that which is not pious, that which is not regulated in the Vedas, that which is random. We do some activities, we do not know the results. And when we die, we have already built up our next body, and we go there without knowing how we got there. So this continues on and on unless we consciously do something about it. Ignorance is the cause of this type of life, this random, unregulated, undirected life, and the reactions to that life keeps us here, gives us day after day, body after body. And the human form of life is the only loophole. That is such an interesting phrase. I don't remember reading it before. In this human form, we create our karma. In all the other forms, animal forms, plant forms, birds, fishes, devas, even in the higher realms of this universe, those lives are dependent on the reactions we created as human beings. So the animals, sometimes they say that, oh, why can't we eat meat? The tigers eat meat. Well, yeah, the tigers have no choice. But the tiger also don't create karma. Especially the tigers don't create slaughterhouse industries. They just do what they have to do. We don't have to do these things. So we need some knowledge. That's the beginning, and then we need to apply that knowledge. That's how we get something to happen. And of course, ultimately we also need Krishna's mercy, Krishna's blessing, but he's very willing to give that to us when we start to strive in that direction. The Vedas therefore give us a chance by pointing out the paths of dharma, artha, kama and moksha is the Sanskrit terms for it. First we have some regulation we understand from the Vedas or from our local scriptures and religions. What is pious, what is sinful, what to avoid, what to do in order to keep us above the water a little bit. Then we gain some level of artha, we get some riches, we get some basis, and we can see that in Europe, or at least I know Sweden, I don't know the rest so much. We're not very religious now, but we used to be religious. So now we're kind of living on that karma. We have a very comfortable material level in general. But if we just burn through that, it's just like if you go to work, if you have a work and you get paid and then you go for a holiday. And if you you take all your money, you just burn them up on your holiday, then when you get back, you need to pace yourself a little bit. So here, we're presently living off our good karma. That's where we are quite comfortable. And if we're not quite comfortable, then maybe we're living off our bad karma. Possibly. It's all based on our old reactions. But what we want to do is understand kama, artha, kama. Then, of course, you enjoy it. Preferably in a regulated way. And then the next step is moksha, which means liberation from this material existence. And often it is taken to mean liberation in an impersonal way of merging with the Brahman energy and becoming everything or nothing. That's not what Krishna is talking about here in Bhagavad-gita. That's just, how to say, a general label that fits all types of liberation. So we are focusing on the bhakti aspect, on the personal liberation, which means we leave the material atmosphere and we join Krishna in his dynamic, eternal atmosphere. The path of religion, or the different kinds of sacrifice recommended above, automatically solve our economic problems. By performance of yajna, we can have enough food, enough milk, etc., even if there is a so-called increase of population. When the body is fully supplied, naturally the next stage is to satisfy the senses. The Vedas prescribe therefore sacred marriage for regulated sense gratification. Thereby one is gradually elevated to the platform of release from material bondage, and the highest perfection of liberated life is to associate with the Supreme Lord. Perfection is achieved by performance of yajna, sacrifice, as described above. Now, if a person is not inclined to perform yajna according to the Vedas, how can he expect a happy life even in this body, and what to speak of another body on another planet? There are different grades of material comfort in different heavenly planets, and in all cases there is immense happiness for persons engaged in different kinds of yajna. But the highest kind of happiness that a man can achieve is to be promoted to the spiritual planets by practice of Krishna consciousness. A life of Krishna consciousness is therefore the solution to all the problems of material existence. Yes, so we're bringing in a little bit of a perspective on this world. We see that sometimes. We look at things, we see a lot of problem. And sometimes people say, yeah, there's too many people, we don't have enough to eat. And Krishna is saying, that's not the problem really. The problem is that we don't have the knowledge on how to fix the situation. It starts with that ignorance. And then it starts with unguided or activities without direction, really. So this yajna idea that we have been hearing about in all these verses basically means the universe is set up in a balanced way. If we do our part, we get what we need. There is no problem for Krishna to supplying what we need. There's no problem for the demigods to supply what we need. There's no problem for the earth planet to supply what we need. But if we don't have that pious credit, if we don't have the karma for it, we won't find it. So therefore the Vedas give those instructions, But on top of those instructions, because we don't want to stay here eternally and do a little yagya and have a little enjoyment, do a little yagya, have a little enjoyment, and then suddenly this Kali Yuga materialistic time starts, we forget all our yagyas and we're entangled again. We want to find out what is the actual goal. We have, of course, a certain comfortable platform to live our lives that is available anywhere. But the ultimate goal is not just to do some yagya to get, some a nice life here and now. We want to elevate our level of the level we aim for, to not just be about a good material life, but to actually realize our spiritual nature. And actually, a loophole, it's fantastic. There's a loophole in this material world. It's called the human body. In this body we can practice spiritual life, and we can go back home, back to Godhead. I think I want to read another verse. 32. Evang bahuvidha yagya vitata brahmano mukhe karma jan vidhitan sarvan evang yagya vimoksyate. All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. Purport. Different types of sacrifice, as discussed above, are mentioned in the Vedas to suit the different types of worker. Because men are so deeply absorbed in the bodily concept, these sacrifices are so arranged that one can work either with the body, with the mind, or with the intelligence. But all of them are recommended for ultimately bringing about liberation from the body. This is confirmed by the Lord herewith, from his own mouth. So yes, we need that perspective, because it's kind of like either we are just randomly living our life any way we feel like, or we're part of a culture that is religious, or we have actual knowledge of the different Vedic, the yogic structure, so to speak, the different types and the different levels and the performance of these yagyas. But if we don't know that main difference between body and soul, between the material world and the spiritual world, between material consciousness that is based on putting oneself in the center and the spiritual consciousness that means putting Krishna in the center, then we don't have the full scope. So here, with one little tiny line, Krishna gives us that information that helps us decide on our direction, and also helps us with the tools how to actually achieve it. I will read a third verse because I think they kind of belong together here. Text 33. Shreyan dravyamaya jagyaj jnana vyagya parantapa sarvang karma kilang partha jnane parishama pyate. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Purport. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in loving transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, Krishna consciousness. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice, and one should know this mystery. Sacrifices sometimes take different forms according to the particular faith of the performer. When one's faith reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer of sacrifices should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possession without such knowledge. For without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest stage of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter onto the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda, fruitive activities, and sometimes jnana kanda, knowledge in pursuit of truth. It is better when the end is knowledge. So this is, again, Krishna is giving Arjuna the full perspective, the understanding. Arjuna started off by saying, okay, I'm a kshatriya, I'm a king, I am a member of the royal order, and it is my duty to fight, to protect the kingdom, to protect the population. But this is too much, Krishna. Everyone's here. We're all friends, family, teachers. Why would we be here and killing each other? It's a terrible thing, and it's quite terrible. It's quite scary. And Krishna is giving the full picture, because sometimes we look at things from a very superficial level and we think this is good and this is bad. I want this and I don't want that. But if you don't understand the full picture, and then this material world, it's practically speaking impossible to know the full picture. Even just simple things in society, you'd think that our political parties that have been working for hundreds of years, I shouldn't say, but at least over 100 years. Our structure in Sweden is basically 100 years as far as I understand it, a little more. They should have gotten the point and managed to solve all the problems by now, isn't it? But the problems are very complex and things keep changing. And the thing is, whatever knowledge we have, if it's not based on that first knowledge, I am the spirit soul, I am not this body. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and in this life, I have the opportunity, I love that line, to utilize this loophole to get out of this bondage. And then the other things can fall into place gradually. Of course, we need to study more, we need to practice more, because building a society is a little more complex than deciding I will sit down now and meditate on Krishna's name in my home. But they are connected, because without that first knowledge and without the perspective that comes out of that first knowledge, we will never find a solution that actually works. But with that knowledge, we can build it up and build it up based on Krishna's word. And also, when we practice this spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, in accordance with Krishna's words, then we get the knowledge from hearing the words, and we get the realization and purification from within our heart, that we understand it better, that we can put it into perspective. But first, we need that knowledge, and Krishna is here to give it to us. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for watching. We aim for updates every Tuesday and Friday. Please come back. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down there. We also have some links and information for you. And there is, of course, the subscribe button. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I'm a Hare Krishna, and I approve this message. Subscribe.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama.